Hey, I heard there's a Titan outside the walls. Yeah, I seen it. What did it look like? It was big! Well, it's a Titan. Of course it was big. Are we talking like 10, 15 meters? Bigger! Really? What would you compare it to? Have you ever been to Evansville, Indiana? Yeah, why? It was that big! And its guts flopped out over the wall. Gross! Did anybody get a look at its face? Not exactly. Another great series of 3 episodes, and the first thing I want to do is talk just a little bit about Rod Reiss, because it looks like his story has run its course. But my first question about Rod Reiss when I'm watching things unfold in these episodes is why was he always letting someone else in the family become the Titan? You know, whether it's Yuri, his younger brother, Frida, his daughter, or now Historia, who he wanted to become a Titan. And I kind of think what most people assume is that it's because he's selfish and he doesn't want to be like this hideous monster. He doesn't want to trade in, I guess, this life he's happy with to have to do the dirty job of actually becoming a Titan. So he likes to delegate that to people other than himself. I think it could be sort of selfish that way. But I also wonder, particularly from some things we'll see later on, is he hoping to not take the power himself so that he can actually have a positive impact on change? Because we'll learn once someone takes this Titan power, they also take like this conviction to the original king's goal of using the Titans to kind of keep this community together and as a means of ruling through threat outside of the walls. And I wonder if he's worried that if he took on the Titan power himself, then he would suddenly change his perspective, his convictions would change, and he would become like all the other people before him. So does he think that there's like a grand plan where he can have someone else take the Titan power, but by he himself remaining king, he can actually change the way all this works? Like, does he maybe really want to eliminate the Titans? Is this his strategy for changing things? And maybe we haven't been giving him enough credit, or at least maybe I haven't and the other characters in the show haven't. Just a possibility there. But of course, as we all know at this point, he does eventually become a Titan. He's faced with a situation where I suppose he feels no choice but to change into a Titan himself. And one thing that really seemed out of place or just seemed different from what we've seen before is everyone else has injected the Titan serum. He even has a syringe for Historia. He wants Historia to inject herself. But at the end, the syringe gets dropped on the ground, the glass breaks, the liquid goes all over the place, and he manages to transform simply by licking it up off the ground. And I wonder, like, if you can do this just by orally taking the serum, why would anybody inject themselves? I mean, I'm not afraid of needles per se, but if you said, hey, equally effective, you can take a pill or get a shot, a lot of times I'm just going to take the pill because needles do hurt. So why would anybody inject themselves if all you could do is lick it up? But then I saw something on the second watch through, something that didn't really catch my attention the first time, but it makes more sense the second time around. But prior to licking that serum up off the ground, Kenny had this knife, this dagger, inside of Rod's mouth, and he actually cut up the inside of his mouth. You can see blood leaking around his mouth, probably coming from his tongue and from his oral mucosa. Yeah, that's a gross word, I know, but it's what it is. So he actually kind of had a break in the body-blood barrier, so licking it up off the ground like that, it could still get into his bloodstream, I guess, through those open wounds in and around his mouth. So that's the explanation I'm giving to myself. I don't know if the rest of the world agrees with that, but it helps me keep everything in the same framework still. And then another question after Rod's transformation, because it kind of has a really unexpected consequence. Like, he becomes this gargantuan supermassive Titan. They say in the show about twice the size of the colossal Titan. And I wonder if he had any kind of inkling of what kind of Titan he would become. Like, I wonder if there's any rule that we'll ever learn or anything to explain why Rod will become this gigantic Titan, or why Bertolt would become the colossal Titan, but then Amir, she's the little spider shark Titan running around flying from trees like a spider monkey. I wonder if there's some way to determine what kind of Titan a person will become. I also wonder what exactly it is that defines the Titan transformation and why it happens the way it does. I'm getting really curious about that, and I just don't have any answers yet. I mean, some possibilities could just be some kind of family genetic trait that's latent and it's opened up by the serum, or maybe it has something to do with the Titan that the serum was derived from. Those are both possibilities. I don't know if they'll ever explain that, but I would kind of like it if they did explain that. But with Rod gone, I wonder, does this mean his story completely ends? Like, are we done with Rod going forward? Or will we learn more about him? Like, will we uncover more information? Like, we saw this sort of transfer of memories that happened with Historia. So will we get more illumination into who Rod Reiss the person was? Or is he done now that his Titan has appeared and been destroyed? Are we just moving on and Rod is old news and we've got plenty of new news we got to tackle? But it does make the story a little bit more interesting for me. Just to think that maybe, just maybe, Rod really did have some measure of noble intentions with what he was doing. Because I like the idea of the complex villains. I like how they're playing in this world with, we don't really know who's right or wrong. We just know we're on this side of the argument and they're on that side. We've seen Levi deal with that more than once. We've seen Armin deal with that. And I also like the idea with Rod, I've vacillated back and forth on exactly is he good, is he bad, or not is he good or bad, but how much of him is good and how much of him is bad. We're all parts of different things that come together. And, I've been pointing out how Eren seems to see things in this unrealistic splitting black and white, all good or all bad, when the truth is everybody's a little bit of both. This show really does a good job with that juxtaposition, because even at this point, I still don't entirely know if I've gotten Rod pegged on exactly who and what he is. But he does exhibit hubris here. And hubris is a fatal flaw for characters going all the way back to classic epics from ancient Greece. But he does talk about if you have this founding Titan power that runs in the Reiss family with this constellation of the ability to do these different things, including controlling memory and controlling Titans, it doesn't make you as powerful as a god. It doesn't make you like a god. In Rod's words, it makes you God. So that is some real hubris coming from there that tells me, I think narratively at the end of the day, he is more villain than hero. And his actions certainly seem more villainous. But I do love how they always have me second guessing myself when I watch this show. We do learn from Rod that spinal fluid is the key to getting these Titan powers. And this can explain why the bearded Titan didn't get Eren's power when the bearded Titan consumed Eren, because he didn't get any of that spinal fluid. Eren went down pretty much in one gulp. I guess if he had stayed down there long enough, maybe some digestive juices would have gotten into the spinal fluid or something. But that was feeling a little bit like a confusing plot hole when I'm trying to figure out the rules to Titan power transfer, Titan changes, just the rules of the game we're playing here. That part confused me a little bit, and I actually misjudged some of Eren's attributes at that point in time because the bearded Titan didn't become a shifter. But now I understand, thanks to Rod Reiss, that the spinal fluid is the key component, because he tells Historia, if you become a Titan and eat Eren, it's not enough just to eat Eren, but you have to make sure you get that good spinal fluid in the process. And around that time, I started to wonder if the Titan serum is just samples of Titan spinal fluid, and then we get an info card that kind of tells us, yeah, people suspect that spinal fluid is what is contained in that Titan serum. And I do want to mention a few things about the confrontation between Levi's squad and Kenny's crew down in the cavern, because I had a lot of fun with this battle. There's more than one good battle in this 3-episode arc. There's a couple of good set pieces here, but I had a lot of fun with the battle down in the cavern. And I'm pretty impressed with the approach that the scouts took in this battle, where they were literally outgunned because Kenny's crew had guns and they didn't. So that is the definition of outgunned. They have more than you, and any is more than zero. But dropping the visibility down with all the smoke from the burning gunpowder and then the flares that they put off, that really was a great way to take away a whole lot of the advantages of the ranged attack that Kenny's crew had with those buckshot mobility gear things. And I'm not sure if decreasing the visibility alone was enough to give the blades a battle advantage, but it did at least level the playing field here. And it was a nice touch because the scouts did make use of their own ranged attack skills because they put Sasha's archery to good use, and it really was a key component of their plan. But as the battle came down to the wire, what really gave the swords or the blades an advantage was a design flaw in the anti-personnel gear that Kenny and his crew had. Because the barrel of the guns and the grappling component of the mobility device, well, they're fixed and they're oriented in the same direction, so effectively they can only attack forward in the direction they're moving. And of course, when you've got the blades, well, there just isn't any kind of restriction like that. So to me, it seems like this anti-personnel gear was really made just to chase down a fleeing target. Because it's so powerful, no one ever expected an opponent who would actually have the guts or the cojones to actually engage in battle with somebody who was armed with this buckshot gear. But I really am sure if there's ever a version 2.0 of this anti-personnel gear, it'll definitely separate out the mobility and firing components of the mechanism. But in this battle, Hanji takes a pretty good hit. She takes a hook to the shoulder, and then she gets slammed really hard into this crystal pillar, and they leave like a blood smear where she hits it, and she just slides all the way down. She's not moving at first. And when she gets injured here, it looks like it could have been pretty serious. And I just had this rush of realization in exactly how much my relationship to the character of Hanji has changed ever since season 1. Because in the beginning, I said it multiple times, she scared me, and I thought she was dishonest. And personally, I saw her as a potential villain. I thought she was somebody who would put science ahead of humanity and her own curiosity about the Titans ahead of what was the smart or the right thing to do. But my opinion has totally changed, and I love Hanji now. I can add Hanji to that list of characters that I was totally wrong about. I can put her right up there with Zachary and Rod Reiss. Or Zachley, if you prefer. Historia really has some bold and meaningful character development in these episodes, too. She confronts the father whom she never really knew, and I think you can understand that she has like this drive to be accepted by him. You live most of your life without family, and then you finally get in touch with some. Sometimes you really, really want this to make up for all that lost time and all that aloneness and all that feeling that you weren't accepted or you didn't have somebody to rely on. You really place a disproportionate value on it when it shows up like that later in life. And she admits that she was aware this was part of her motivation because she does confess to Eren at one point that when they were down in the cavern, at first, she wasn't considering what was best for anybody. She just wanted her father to be proud of her, and that's kind of touching, and you can totally empathize with that, in my opinion. And I understand where she was coming from, but at the same time, I'm proud that she overcame that, and she made what I think is the right decision. Because she does get the courage and clarity to oppose her father, and she even sort of symbolically kind of cuts ties with the Reiss family and with their legacy. But despite separating herself from her father and making that bold move forward, she's still willing to take on the duty of being the Queen of Fritzburg. But she really does represent regime change in a way. I mean, it's still the Reiss family line, but she's a new kind of sovereign, or at least she hopes to be. I think she plans to be a monarch totally separated from the Titan ties that secretly kept her family in power for all these years. And she also lets her actions speak louder than her words, because she suits up and she's ready to go to the front lines with the rest of the fellow soldiers there, the fellow scouts and the garrison folks from Orvud. She steps up to become this awesome warrior queen. And I really like Ervin's interaction with Historia in this matter. He knows it's his responsibility to tell her that she's not allowed to go out there and to go into battle, but you can also tell he kind of totally likes the idea that she's a ruler who's willing to put her life on the line to save the lives of her subjects. He absolutely puts up like the weakest resistance imaginable when she tells him she's going to go fight anyway when he tells her that she can't. And I like it. He just looks at her and goes, "Oh well, in my current condition, not like I can stop you." It's sort of his version of, "Oh no, don't leave." That kind of thing. It's great. I love the whole thing there. And even though it does feel a little contrived, I found it absolutely narratively satisfying that she's the one who strikes the killing blow against her father, against Rod Reiss, or Rod's nape, what's left when the Titan gets blown up. I mean, there's a lot of symbolic value in that moment showing the old way being killed by the new way. But from a more practical point of view, it also keeps her from harboring any resentment toward another individual. Because imagine had someone else struck that killing blow, then there might always be that concern or that tension if, even though Historia says she's cool with it, maybe she still harbors some weird resentment. Her doing it herself, it's kind of like from the John Steinbeck book of Mice and Men that we all probably had to read in middle grades. But, you know, I should have killed my own dog, this old guy says. I shouldn't have let somebody else kill my dog, because then you're putting that little bit of resentment between them. And, you know, spoiler, but something like that goes down between George and Lenny as well. So I like the idea that she's the one who swings the blades that put an end to Rod Reiss. But when she eliminates Rod, she gets this transfer of memories, and I don't know how that worked exactly. I'm assuming it's linked in some way to the memory abilities of the Reiss bloodline, but I suppose it also could have all been sort of like an idealized delusion that Historia created in her own mind. But we do see a few glimpses of Rod in the past, and those make me stop and wonder if maybe he wasn't so bad after all, like I said before. Because we see him pleading with his father, and his brother, you know, says, I promise it'll be okay. Then his brother changes and he realizes that his younger brother, I think it's his younger brother, Yuri, he has this change in attitude suddenly when he inherits the Titan power. So maybe that's when Rod realizes he can't take that power for himself and still affect change in this world. Because if at the end of the day, he actually did want to do the same sort of thing that Eren wants to do, and Erwin wants to do, and Historia wants to do, well, that would be the true tragedy. But just the same, once he took his Titan form, the course was set and there was no way around it. And then with Eren, you know, he starts this all out strapped by chains to this sacrificial altar with a little muzzle in his mouth, and Rod claims that the full power of the founding Titan can't work inside Eren because Eren doesn't have the royal blood. But what I want to ask is this true? And the reason I say, is this true, is because I think Grisha probably figured out a workaround for this whole thing. I don't think Grisha would have started this process if he didn't have an end game in plan. You know, he didn't have the end in sight. And I'm starting to think that that's what's in the basement, right? I mean, we've been teased with this basement so long, I almost wouldn't care if we never got there and it was just like the running joke of the never-ending basement story. But that's got to be what's in the basement, right? Some way to let Eren get the full power of the founding Titan. And I've already gone on the record multiple times of thinking there's a family link between Grisha and the Beast Titan there. And the Beast Titan clearly seems to have a handle on his powers. So whatever that Beast Titan did to make it work well for him not being a Reiss, well then maybe that same kind of thing could work for Eren. I mean, maybe, right? But there's that vial down in the cavern that has this armor power. And Eren takes this vial, bites it open, he's able to put out all these crystal constructs, turns his whole body into like a crystal statue of his Titan form. And people are really counting on that power going forward, but in my mind I'm thinking, is that permanent now? Like, did he get that power forever? Or is this like a potion from a game of Dungeons and Dragons that has like a limited duration or a limited number of uses? Like, he's used it. Did he get another vial just in case, or is this permanent? Because the Scout's plan really seems to rely on Eren maintaining that armor power, or at least long enough to plug up the hole in Walmaria. But knowing what we know about the Titans and the Titan shifters that are inside the walls and the ability to make more Titans if you have the syringes, I'm kind of curious, does plugging up that breach in Shiganshina, does it really accomplish anything more than maybe just a temporary respite? You get a few outside Titans from coming in, but now we got so many Titans on the inside, they're still a threat, whether the hole's in the wall or not. And also, Eren thinks that the coordinate power doesn't work on Rod, and Hanji seems to think so too. So I start to wonder, is this like a trait of the royal blood? Is it because Rod is from the Reiss family that the coordinate power can't work against his Titan form? Or is it just that Eren doesn't know how to use the power yet? Because he's in the back of that cart and he's throwing his hand up and he's saying, stop, stop. but I didn't see any of the power waves coming off of him, and I really think it's just as likely that Eren doesn't quite understand the power as it is that Rod was immune to it. But with Rod dead, I don't know if we'll ever get the answer to that. And in these episodes, Eren does spend a lot of time wallowing in self-loathing, and he resigns himself to being eaten. But when it's time to protect, he overcomes, just like at the end of Season 2. When it was time to protect, he unlocked that shout power, that scream power, that coordinate power. And then he finds the motivation to eat that vial that says armor on it. And he finds the ability a new power gets unlocked, this ability to produce these crystal structures that save his friends down in the cavern when their lives are in danger, maybe even more so because they're trying to rescue him. And then when he goes back to feeling useless up on top of those walls in Orvud, he beats the self-loathing out of himself. Now, I don't know if that's the best way to do that, but it seems to work for Eren. Like, I've tried to slap myself, hit myself when I'm mad. I always pull my punches. I can't hit myself full force. I wouldn't want to, you know? But he seems to be able to do it, and it snaps him out of the self-loathing. He beats the self-loathing out of himself. And then he becomes a Titan. And he helps to save the day by charging with this big net filled with explosives straight into Titan Rod's mouth, or at least what's left of it after his face all got scraped off. And from a narrative perspective, a storytelling perspective, I fully expect Eren to survive, but it would have to be a very real fear for Eren and for his friends and for the rest of the scouts that explosion could be fatal to Eren. I mean, he's right there, and he's smaller than Rod, so he's taking proportionally a bigger blast than Rod is. And also, let's just say Rod survived the explosion and he managed to swallow Eren and get that spinal fluid and get that founding Titan power. It probably would have been game over. So this was a high-risk maneuver. But what I found more interesting about Eren here is when he was in his human form, because he managed to win the Titan fight that never happened. You know, Kenny was setting up a Titan fight between Titan Eren and Titan Historia that never happened down in the Crystal Cavern, but he won that fight by submitting. Because if he had transformed in the moment, I really think Historia would have injected herself and she would have transformed as well. But his submission to her absolutely allowed her to take a breath, to think about who she is and what she wants. And it also helped that she remembered Ymir a little bit, and she had thoughts of all the things Ymir had said to her in the past. And the show used like this tense moment to illustrate beautifully a path to victory through pacifism, and empathy and nonviolence. It allows Historia to reflect on a past act of kindness from Eren towards her when he made her feel like a normal person when she was feeling really bad. So him being peaceful and pacifist and passive in that moment allowed things to go where they would end up, which I'm going to call a victory for where we're hanging at the end of episode 9. So the show, it tells me, you never know who might be tempted to transform into a Titan and eat ya, so you probably ought to be kind to folks. But of course, the world's not perfect, so other acts of violence are required before we get our victory here, and that's unfortunate, but it's also the reality of the world these characters live in. Also, when Eren and his friends are on the wall at Orvud, well, we see a demonstration of a simple principle. And I know it's cliche, but I really like the idiom, be the change you want to see in the world. And they can relate to the children in Orvud, because they were there back in Shiganshina when they were children. But they know the difference in this world today is because they are on the walls and they're ready to protect. And the importance of a motivation to protect rather than simply avenge, well, that absolutely seems to be an important and recurring theme in this story. And now I want to finish up by talking a little bit about Kenny. And with Kenny, I think about another sort of cliche phrase that we've all probably heard a lot, but nobody is the villain in their own story. And Attack on Titan rarely lets me get too comfortable with calling someone a villain. I mean, we talked all about this with Rod, and even to a lesser degree with the way I used to feel about Hanji. But we see down in the cavern that Kenny was considering taking the power of the king for himself. Of course, when Rod told him it wouldn't work because it's not the Reiss bloodline, he kind of abandoned that plan. But I wonder, maybe what were his motivations to take that power? And I think probably a big part of it was to stop his family's persecution. The Ackermans have been persecuted for over 100 years in this world. But he may have also felt like he could make the world a better place. And we do see him reflect on some unselfish moments in this episode 9. We see his first encounter with Yuri, the brother of Rod, who was the Titan Transformer in the family at that point in time. And he goes into Yuri's service, though probably that was just to get close so he could eventually steal the power, or at least that's how he learned about how to steal the power. And we also see what poor condition Levi was in. I mean, Levi looked terrible when Kenny came and rescued him from that situation and took him in as his own ward. We also see Kenny earn loyalty from the people that end up joining his crew by saving them, particularly the female. I think her name is Cavern. And he gets others to believe in him, just the same way that Levi believes in Eren. So maybe there's a little bit more to Kenny's motivations here than I've ever given him credit for. But at the end of these 3 episodes, when he's confronted by Levi, it looks like Kenny plans to become a Titan. Now, Levi might be able to knock the syringe away before Kenny gets it. Or, another thought I had is, what if Kenny acts like he's going to inject himself, Levi goes for the needle, and he stabs Levi with it? What if Kenny turns Levi into a Titan here? That'd be crazy. But the most likely thing to me does seem to be that Kenny is going to successfully become a Titan. What does that mean? I don't know. Now, of course, Levi's certainly no stranger to fighting Titans, but I can't recall right now, did he have his ODM gear with him or just a rifle? Because it's a lot harder to fight without the ODM gear, but if it's Titan Kenny versus Levi, that's not a fight that Levi's going to run away from, in my opinion. But what I really want to know, what I'm really asking myself internally, is there any chance of reconciliation between Levi and Kenny? Any chance at all between these two coming together and finding a common ground? I don't think there is, by where events have got us at the point that episode 9 ends, but I would kind of like it if there was a chance at reconciliation, even if it's like a deathbed reconciliation and Kenny's final gasp before he dies. That would be nice to me. But what is a Titan Kenny going to be like? Like, is Titan Kenny going to be the next major threat in this show, in the next little arc of season 3? And also, does that Ackerman bloodline give a Titan any kind of special abilities? Like, will Titan Kenny have something just ridiculous that I couldn't even anticipate? Because they've already got that innate killing ability. You take that killing ability, you make it 15 meters high, maybe they could breathe fire or something. Oh, that could be bad. But to get to the answer, I'll just have to watch more episodes and find out. So I want you to know, I'm proud of you for watching anime, and I'll talk to you soon.